Let's see. I'm going to turn
Yeah.
off this. Hey, what's up, man? I'm going to turn off my email here so we can have less things beeping at us. I'm going to turn
Yeah.
off
Yeah.
my phone. I think that's about all I can manage. Everything else that beeps is just gonna beep. But yeah.
Well, I imagine, I think we started talking and we got to know each other probably about 3 years or so ago, maybe 2, 3 years
Yep.
ago. And I imagine even just looking, we're friends, but I even see you on Instagram and I'm like, this guy's life has drastically changed in a period of 2 to 3 years.
It was always busy, but
Yeah.
now it's busy, I guess, with more, not with more of a purpose. It's always had purpose, but I guess there's just more demands. Like the other busy is self-generated, it's
Right.
me
Right.
making it happen. Now I'm still doing that, but then there's a lot more inputs that want things, or other opportunities or whatever, and there's just no possible way to juggle all of it. So I have to get better at prioritizing. Going to get some systems in place this year to kind of take me from garage startup
Right.
to kind of some more established systems that'll allow me to be more efficient so I can focus on what I need to be focused on, which is the writing. But up until this point, if you want to write, you also have to do all these supporting efforts. So in the military, we have the main effort and we have all the supporting efforts. And as you know, but I need to get better about me not being the one that's running all of those supporting efforts, kind of like the
Mm,
merchandise stuff. Like that, my wife and I couldn't meet demand. We're in the
right.
bedroom, we're in the living room, we're in the kitchen, stuffing envelopes, stuffing boxes, printing labels, dealing with customer service. Like like
Yeah.
so, oh, I
Yeah.
forgot to put the apartment B on my order, but it's already gone out. Like
Right. Right.
all that. And so finally, we're like, okay, we need to outsource that, go to a fulfillment center, but find one that allows us to put our kind of like more boutique type stuff in
Hmm.
there. So it's not just
Hmm.
them putting out junk. It's like that curated stuff that I like the bottle breacher stuff, or the direct action bookmarks, or Yeti cups, or Black Rifle, whatever it is. Like to get that all on there, and then also have them do what they do at the fulfillment center, which is like
Right.
t-shirts and hats and that sort of thing. But all has to be all top quality stuff. So that'll be outsourced. So point being, getting smarter about this stuff.
Good. Well, what a good position to be in. It's funny because somebody might interpret that look, it's not complaining, but somebody
Good
might
problems to
interpret
have.
that
Good
and
problems
say
to
like,
have.
"Oh, well, wouldn't it be nice if I had to worry about order fulfillment and everything else?" So,
It is nice.
it is
Oh yeah.
nice.
Didn't
It
say
is
it's not
nice.
nice. That is for sure nice. It is a good problem to have, no doubt. That's the problem that you want. And then once you have that, not necessarily a problem, but just an issue, it's time to then figure out how to be more effective and efficient with it, so that you have more time to devote to the main effort and things you can't outsource, and then also to personal things like family. So
Yeah.
gotta be smart about all this.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because look, in my own business with Order Man, and you and I think kind of cut our teeth in the entrepreneurial space. Kind
Yep.
of up, maybe not the entrepreneurial space, but
Oh, it
our
is.
particular movement. It's at about the same time. I've deliberately and intentionally had to throttle back on some opportunities, things that arise because I have other priorities. And I'm wondering, as you talked about a minute ago, where you said, I have all these offers and things thrown at me, and it's only going to get more so, I imagine, in your life, how you decide that's worth pursuing. Nope, not interested in that because I got these other things I got to do. How do you personally prioritize the opportunities and also the personal ambitions that you have for yourself?
Yeah, so up until this point, I've said no to pretty much everything, as far as things that were, I guess, commercial in nature might be the best way to say
Mm,
it. So what I've said yes to are things like interviews, like being part of projects, that sort of things that help grow the readership through something of value, not just
hmm.
something like, hey, we wear these sunglasses, and we'll give you
Right.
X. Like I said no to all that. Like that's
Which is
easy.
tempting because it's easy for somebody to say, "Hey, we're going to pay you, 50 grand if you do these things." It's very tempting to say, "Yeah, yeah, I'll definitely do that."
Yeah. Now I've said no because I want to put more thought into how that goes. And right now, and up to this point and going forward as well, I realize the importance of that trust that's been built up with, whether it's the audience on Instagram, whether it's the readership, whether it's someone that just, tunes in for an interview here or there on different podcasts, whatever it is, the power of that is that trust. And that's because I haven't said yes to these things, like haven't all of a sudden become a fan of something that I haven't like talked about before, where it's obvious, this company contacted him and now is giving him X amount of dollars to say, this is awesome.
And the other thing about that too, I think, is sometimes like, cause I have companies reach out and I'm like, I don't care what kind of underwear you wear. I don't care what kind of mattress you sleep on. Like none of that has anything to do with what I talk about. So pick your mattress, pick your underwear, pick your sunglasses, and let's talk about other more important things. That's my perspective anyways.
Yeah, no, I think for podcasts especially, it is more appropriate to have a show that's sponsored by something, because we're used to seeing a commercial and you're like, oh, obviously the entire, let's say, Dallas Cowboys football team doesn't endorse, X product just because it's playing during their game, or it's obvious that newscaster up there doesn't support those 5 commercials I just saw. He doesn't even know what ran. He's just getting ready for the next segment, but those are supporting his show. So I think with a podcast, it's much more appropriate to read off something like, hey, try this, this mattress. They're bringing you the podcast today. And then you go on and do what you need to do. It's just, we're more in tune to that from growing up, having watched television with that model. So, so I think that's more appropriate rather than something that's so intimate and personal, like some of the social media platforms, especially if you're like a gear-centric person like me and I use it in the books and people see me using it just in my daily life, to then all of a sudden have a sponsored thing in there just never really, didn't really sit right with me. But I think with a podcast or something, and I have put some thought into this because I just launched mine, Danger Close, Beyond the Books of Jack Carr. But we'll talk about that a little later. But with that or something like that, I think it's more appropriate to have it sponsored by something, and then you just move on.
For sure. Well, and I think what holds more weight is I see you have, if I can see it correctly, I just turned 40, so my eyesight's maybe diminished a little bit, but I see an Eberly Stock hat you've got on. Yeah. I see Sornex Outdoors. Yeah. I mean, you and I personally know Glenn. We personally know Bert and Pops.
Yeah.
Like these are guys that, maybe they're sponsoring some things or they're throwing some funds your way to be able to do some cool things and put some cool content out there, but also they're friends. Like these are guys that we spend time with, we hunt with, we interact with, we have conversations with, they hold us accountable, we hold them accountable. So much more fulfilling and rewarding that way.
Yeah, I got my first Eberly Stock pack, I think in 2008, I want to say.
Is that right? Wow.
Like so it's been a little while, and then I got a couple more over the years. So I did, none of that stuff has been a sponsor. Nothing's been a sponsor yet except my podcast with SIG out of the gate, which is kind of cool because I use that SIG 226 on every deployment, so it's kind of near and dear to my heart. Up to this point, it's just been everything that I use or that tells a story about my character. So sometimes I weave things in that I don't use, that I don't like, because it's telling a story about another character. So you're looking at him and you're like, wait, this person just opened a Guns and Ammo magazine and went through some advertisements and picked some stuff. And I was wearing
you put all the bullshit on the villains then, it sounds like.
Sometimes the character that you just need to add a little maybe comic relief for those of us that know what we're talking about or live this lifestyle or been a part of these different industries, both personally and professionally for so long. And that's kind of fun for me to do. So I do. So it does work both ways as far as mentions, particularly in the novels as I develop characters. But if it's more personal, like on my my Instagram or something like that, everything that I'm using is stuff that I genuinely like and use and that sort of thing. Or I'll say I'm trying it,
Right.
So,
sure.
Trying this out, pretty cool. Can't wait to give it a shot. Can't wait to take it in the mountains this year or whatever it might be. And then if somebody sends me something that I don't like, then I just don't talk about it. I'm just not, I'm not a reviewer. I'm just kind of a user of things. And if it's fun and productive or think it would help somebody, then I'll hold it up and I'll talk about it. But otherwise I'm not going to get on and trash somebody's whatever that they're proud of that they sent me. And it's just might not be for me, Right.
Yeah. That is interesting. Cause I'm sure you get a lot of offers and requests and things sent to you. And it's like, if all I did was spend time opening packages and reviewing these things, I wouldn't write. But that actually leads to the point that you said earlier. It is. It's a great problem. Again, not complaining, But also, I think a lot of people will write that off as lucky. Oh well, it's nice. You're lucky because all these companies want to send you this stuff. It isn't luck, man. I've seen you for the past 3 years, and of course, I know you've got a whole other career prior to what you're doing now. That you've built this, you've established this. I've had people say, well, right, it must be nice to be able to talk with these incredible guys. Who the hell do you think I was 6 years ago? I wouldn't have had any opportunity to talk with Jack or Jocko or Andy Frisilla or Steve Ranella or any of these guys. You think that just happened by happenstance? No, man, I created that. And other people afforded me that opportunity. But that took hard work. That isn't just something that just, miraculously came out of the woodworks. I even think about you, this relatively novice writer who created these incredibly powerful opportunities almost out of the gate. And you might think you got lucky, but no, you forged these relationships with Thor and some of these other guys that helped you catapult your career to what it is now, 3-4 years later.
Yeah, you have to build it regardless. And so that when that opportunity does present itself or the door cracks just the tiniest little bit, you're ready to kick it in. Because if that door cracks and you're not ready to kick it in and you're just going to stumble through it and fall into the middle of the room, you're going to get lit up by the enemy. You have to be ready to kick that thing in, take your corner, do your job. You have to be ready to do that. Or you can sit around just waiting for that like saying everybody else is lucky, I guess. And then all of a sudden you get that door cracked and you're like, hold on, and you're not ready. So regardless whether that door gets opened or not, you got to build it. And for me, that started as a kid because I knew I wanted to serve my country in uniform as a SEAL. And then I wanted to write thrillers. So all that lifetime of prep for the SEAL teams, all that lifetime of prep to be an author by reading in the genre, by understanding the history of the genre, which books moved the genre forward and why. And it was just a part of me, understanding Joseph Campbell's Hero with a Thousand Faces and his interviews with Bill Moyers in 1988 on PBS, the Power of Myth, incorporating those into me as I either viewed a TV show, viewed a movie, read a book. It just all became part of my experience. And then studying warfare. Like I didn't just start studying warfare when I joined the SEAL teams or wait for someone to give me a class and just be a passive recipient of that knowledge and then go along my way. No, I was actively engaged in studying warfare, terrorism, insurgencies, counterinsurgencies from the earliest of days. My earliest memories are of the 1979 Iranian hostage crisis, are of Walter Cronkite counting those days down that Americans have been held hostage in Iran every night with my parents. It's of seeing Time magazine, of seeing Newsweek, which were the two we got at our house, seeing the newspapers that we got at our house come across with headlines of the Beirut bombings, of TGBA 847, all these different terrorist events through the 80s. And then later, when I'm much older, and in the late 80s, Pan Am 103. So all of these things, I didn't just like see them. No, I read those articles and then I did more research into those articles. I went to the library. I read everything I possibly could. And back then, you could do a lot of research. Now it's maybe a little bit more difficult, even though there's more information. I feel like it's more difficult for people because more distractions. And you have to sift through it all. Back then, yeah, you had some primary news sources, and then you could go to maybe some secondary ones, or you can go to some other ones that are just getting offhand mentions in a book. But that book then opens up a whole new world for you, even though you went there for something else. Wow, look what you just discovered by getting to what you wanted to confirm or learn a little bit more about. So that didn't just happen when I woke up one morning as I was getting out of the military and said, let's give this writing thing a try. What should I do? Maybe I should go back. No, it didn't work that way. It was a whole lifetime of preparing myself for what I did as I transitioned out, which was writing novels. So it was a calling. Both military and writing are both callings to me. I didn't look at my time in the military as a career. I don't look at my time now in publishing as a career. Both are professions. And I think there's a distinct difference between a profession and a career. And answering the call to a profession is something people should listen to.
How would you differentiate between the two, career versus profession? What would you say is the distinguishing difference?
Yeah, for those in the military, I describe it in my novels is that someone becomes a careerist. And one of the best places that illustrates that is an historical fiction piece called Once an Eagle by Anton Meyer. And that's one of my most gifted books. But it follows two guys from before World War I up to Vietnam. And one of them's an officer the whole time. He's like this political creature. He's the careerist. And then Sam Damon is the character's name, enlisted, gets a battlefield commission in World War One, and he is the professional. He's the one that listened to that calling. He is in the profession of arms. There's a reason they don't call it the career of arms. You never hear that. It's just the profession of arms for a reason.
Right.
Yet some people join the military as a career choice, and that's fine. But
Is it though? I mean, you say that, but when you say that, it sounds like you're saying it's better to be a professionalist, and at the same time, you're saying, but that's fine. Is it fine?
I think it's depending on what you're gonna do. So if you're coming in to learn a trade and get out and go do that trade, if it's like part of your plan to either maybe get some money for college or learn a trade and then move on in that trade, it's different than having a calling and answering that call to serve. It's different. So that is a calling. Hey, I want to learn some skills in the computer field. I think I'm going to join the military as a way to continue along that path, learn a little something, get some money for college. That's a career. There's two distinctly different ways of looking at your time in the military, and maybe a career path is fulfilling to someone. It's not fulfilling to me. It's a calling. It is a profession, just like with writing.
So you would say, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, so tell me if I'm wrong, but that the career path might be more of a strategic move to something higher, better, grander, more of a calling. Is that what you're saying? Or at least it should be?
Or maybe it's not a calling. Maybe it's just, I think I can make some money at this, or I can support my family at this. And maybe you don't think anything beyond that. Once again, fine, especially if the guy can come and fix your computer. Like, that's what I care about in the military. It's a career to him. That's fine. He's moving on, whatever. That's what I mean by fine. Like, you do your job, you be a professional, great. But then if it's a calling to service, I think that's just something that's different. It's innate. Like, you didn't wake up one morning and feel like at age 5, 6, 7 and feel this calling to fix computers. Now, if you felt a calling to serve and you join join the military, and that's your skill set, and that's where you're going, you're passionate about it, and this is your profession, so it's different. So it's kind of these intangibles. And it. It's one of those things like it if you're on the path as a professional, and it if you're on a path as a career. And there are people in the military, even in special operations, in the SEAL teams. I talk about them in my novels, who are careerists, and maybe they didn't start that way. Maybe they got up to a certain rank and realized that they had to become political animals to move forward. That's a possibility. Or maybe they were careerists the whole time and they just wanted to get to that retirement. And they saw an admiral one day, or they saw a general one day, and they were like, I want to do that. And then I can maybe get on one of these, the board of Raytheon or something So it's different. The military-industrial complex is a real thing. If you haven't listened to the speech, if you only heard that one part of Eisenhower's speech, well, there's more to it. Listen to the whole thing, watch the whole thing, read the whole thing. So you have those two different experiences. And there is an industry up there. If you're in your last couple of years at the Pentagon and you're a 4-star, 3-star, 2-star, whatever it is, and something comes across your desk from Raytheon or from L3 or Boeing or whatever it is, and you want to serve on one of those boards and show up to 2 meetings a year and make $250,000, then maybe you sign that thing. I don't know.
Well, so you bring up an interesting point on that. If you're talking about the difference between careerist and professionalist, I've got so many questions and rabbit holes I want to dive down as you're talking about this. And look, the reason I bring it up is because the men who are listening to this are facing these types of choices, and when you look at a career path, and we'll use career defined by what you just said, it's pretty tempting. I can do this for 20 years. I can get promoted. I can get my income. I'll get better opportunities. Maybe I'll run for office. I don't really care about politics all that much or affecting change, but this is how I get notoriety. This is how I get what it is I'm after and provide for my family. That's a pretty tempting thing versus, hey, you know what? Let me offer a counter to you. Let me tell you that you're going to spend the next decade or more trying a bunch of different things. Most of it, 95% of it's not going to work out. And you're going to fall flat on your face. You're not going to make any money. People are going to ridicule you. And then maybe, just maybe in 15, 20 years, maybe you'll find something you're really passionate about and you'll turn into this more of a professional. It's very tempting to go the career route.
And that's why I think most people do. And it's tough, it's tough because you have to really know yourself. You have to listen to yourself, and you have to answer the call. And there's so many ways along the path where you can trip up from a very early age. People are going to discourage you from a very early age, whether it's intentional or not. The looks you get when you tell someone that you want to be a SEAL are very similar to the looks you get from people when you tell them you want to be an author. It's like, he'll grow out of it. So
Yeah,
I started
sure,
my,
yeah.
and my parents were very encouraging. But like all parents, they worried that their, probably kid's not going to make it, or he's going to stumble. And, everybody's going to stumble. Everybody's going to get knocked down. You got to get up and keep moving forward. And you have to get up and keep moving forward in a particular way. That's the other part of that. You have to get up and keep moving forward in a way that's inspiring to your circle, whether it's one person or your family or a family and friends, whatever that might be. But I started my retirement speech in 2016 when I got out of the military, and I told my mom that I finally grew out of it. So it just took 20 years, but she's more worried from a mom's perspective that you're going to not come home type thing. Which is
when you said I grew out of it, what did you grow out of?
So people think, oh, he'll grow out of it. Like when you're young and you say you want to be an astronaut, people are like, that's science. That's not. He'll grow out of it in the mind. So don't say it, but it's in the back of their mind.
Right.
He'll grow out of that. I want to be a fireman. I can't wait to be a fireman. He'll grow out of it. Those things that you say when you're a kid, when you're just pure, and you don't realize that you're getting discouraged with whether it's a look or a suggestion to go elsewhere, that become more and more prevalent as you move along in life,
or even just a patronizing pat on the head. It's like, sure,
it all adds up.
That's what you want. Yeah, good. Oh, that's cute. Yeah, go ahead and do that.
It all adds up, and I got that as an adult too. When I started to tell people that I'm writing a novel, and I kept that close hold in the military. But once I was out, I started telling people. I think during that last couple months, when you're just going around to medical and dental and you're doing all that stuff you need to do to get out, I started, because people are asking at that point, what are you going to do?
What are you going to do?
And, I was like, I'm working on a few things, and then people would try to dig deeper. I'd be like, I got some options and opportunities. See, I try to not talk to them about it, but there are certain trusted agents, certain family and friends that I did talk about it with, and you get those same looks that you got when you were 5 years old and said you wanted to be an astronaut, like exactly the same, or whatever it might be. So,
and I bet there's a weird stigma. I was going to say, I bet there's a weird stigma in the SEAL community, especially over the past, I would say 5 years or so, with, oh, you want to be a writer? Yes. So you're going to write a self-help book.
Exactly.
A novel is a different kind of a different style of writing. That isn't something that I think is that common with the SEAL community relative to, hey, let me write a self-help or a leadership book.
Yeah, no, and when I was in the teams, even when I first came in, I didn't talk about it. I was solely focused on the task at hand. I knew what I was going to do after I got out of the military, but I didn't. That was not at the forefront. I did the same things during my time in the military that I did in high school, or that I did in junior high, which was continuing to read thrillers and continuing to read nonfiction works on warfare to make myself a better operator, a better leader, because I thought that's what I owe the guys under my command. I owe them that pendulum between family and the profession is over here. And it has to be, because that's what you owe those guys you're taking down range. That's what you owe their families. That's what you owe the mission in the country by default there. So I didn't change anything up while I was in. I wasn't practicing writing or anything like that. I was reading just like I have my entire life. And that prepared me for getting out and moving on to then do that, to then write those same kind of novels that I enjoyed growing up.
Was that intentional? Were you reading? I think you're a little bit of a different beast in that you knew early on what you wanted to do, but as you were reading these books and still serving in the teams, did you know you were reading in preparation for what you were going to do, or were you just enjoying the work?
Yeah, I didn't look at it in those terms because I started reading at such an early age. It was just always, it was so natural. So I didn't look at it, I'm doing this so that when I get out, I'll be better prepared too. That never crossed my mind. But looking back, the benefit of hindsight, that did prepare me, if that makes sense. Yeah. So it wasn't in preparation for, it just happened to, because it was so natural, because it was that calling. So yeah, much, Yeah, very authentic and real, and just a part of me from my earliest days. My mom was a librarian, so I grew up surrounded by books and this love of reading. So that has never left me and stays today. All my, you see, I have a new office here from the last time
I
we
do.
talked.
I see
Before
it.
that, books that go three up were behind me. Now they're over here on some more industrial shelving
Because
because
you
we're
moved. Did you
rent.
move? You
We
moved.
moved, yeah, just down the road.
That's
So
right.
we're just in a temporary place right now. So I have these industrial shelves, and each one of these in front of me here go three deep with my books. A lot of those are ones that I grew up with. I still have those books that I enjoyed reading growing up, whether it be terrorism, insurgencies, counterinsurgencies, warfare, or it's those thrillers that I grew up with. Although now I'm going back and getting them in hardcover with first edition signed, but I still have
Dang.
those
So you're on a
that I
mission.
read growing up. Yeah, yeah.
You always have the coolest office too. I look. Tell me about that. Is that's a shotgun above you? Tell me about that shotgun above your
Yeah,
head
so
there.
that's a Parker from 1898, and I was back at SIG in New Hampshire, and we went on a hunt, an upland hunt in New Hampshire, and I saw it on the wall of this essentially cabin that was built back in the 1800s. So
Hmm.
everything, the ceilings are like this, really
Yeah,
small
sure.
back then.
Yeah.
And so I saw this on the wall, and I started looking at it, and the guy that owns the place walked over, and he's like, "Hey, you want to take it down?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, that's
Of
awesome, Damascus
course.
barrels," and I was like, "Man, this thing is so cool. I'd love to hunt with this once." And he's like, "Well, it's for sale." I'm like,
Mm,
really? And so anyway, now it's here. And I want
nice.
to do
Have you
one hunt
hunted with
with
it?
it. Not yet. I want to get to it. Just arrived like I don't know a month ago, but I need to get some low velocity loads because it was made back then.
Right.
It probably would handle something, but
Yeah, you don't want to find out.
yeah, exactly. I'll do the research, get the right low velocity loads, and then I want to take it on at least one hunt, and then put it back. It's a pretty cool
I don't
piece.
know when that Utah spring turkey season starts, but sounds like it's a perfect gun
But
to take a
I
turkey
know I'm going
with.
to be missing it this year because it's so busy. It's just it's crazy right now with the series. Just got back from LA.
I
Was
know. Tell
out
me
there.
about that. How was that?
It was crazy. Yeah, I drove to LA. COVID protocols in place for the series, so I was there 5 days. I was tested four times.
Really?
Yeah, they're very serious about it, obviously. But crazy, 350 people working on the set. So
Hmm.
350 people have jobs, and Chris Pratt.
Because of you.
Well, because Chris Pratt and Antoine Fuqua took a risk on me.
No, I know. I know. There's elements that come into play, but also that wouldn't be possible if it weren't for you.
Yeah, I guess there is that. There is
I
that. It
mean,
would be
look, I know you're
possible.
being humble. I know you're being modest, but I want people to know, like, you put yourself out there and you created this, and now you're creating other opportunities for hundreds and hundreds of people. That's a pretty powerful thing.
It's crazy. And it wouldn't be possible without my friend Jared Shaw, who was a SEAL with me and who called me 5 years after he got out of the military, right before my book came out, and wanted to call and thank me for what I did for him in the SEAL teams. And I couldn't even remember what that was.
Mm,
He calls me in November of 2017. The first book came out in March of 2018, so a few months before. And he's like, "Hey," first he's like, "Do you remember me?" And I'm like, "Of course, Jared, I remember you. How's it going?"
right,
And
right.
and he's like, "Hey, I always wanted to thank you for sitting me down as I was leaving the SEAL teams, talking to me about transition, introducing me to people in the private sector. No one else did that for me, and I always wanted to thank you." And I was like, "No problem, buddy. How's it going?" And he said, "Well, it's going great, but I heard you wrote a book." And I said, "Yeah, it's coming out in a few months. I have this galley copy thing, which is like a rough draft, which I know you've gotten a few of those.
Oh yeah.
But I'm like, I can send you that. It comes out in March." And he's like, "Yeah, I'd love to check it out, but I'd like to also give it to a friend of mine." And I was like, "Yeah, no problem. Who's that?" And he said, "Chris Pratt."
Mm,
So Jared took a risk on me. He read it first. He loved it. He then gave it to Chris and said, "Chris, this is your next project." And
wow.
Chris read it on a plane, and I have a picture of him reading it for the first time in December of 2018, like December 28th. And then a week later, he called and wanted to option it. And I thought of him playing the role the whole time, which is crazy because he'd only done Parks and Rec and Zero Dark
Yep.
30 up until
Yeah.
that point. So no Guardians
Oh,
of the
was he in Zero
Galaxy.
Dark 30? I
A
have I
very
seen it?
small
I don't even
role
know if
as a
I've seen it.
SEAL.
Okay.
As a SEAL.
Yeah, interesting.
And I knew he hadn't done anything like this. He hadn't done anything dark, gritty. And I thought, this is the guy that can do this. And he seemed like
Yeah.
a great guy. And then we met later, and now we're friends, and he's just amazing. But that's the crazy part, is I thought of him playing the role, and then I thought of
Mhm.
Antoine directing. And Antoine did Training Day, did The Replacement Killers, did Tears of the Sun, Magnificent Seven, Equalizer. And he's just one of the most amazing people I've ever met in my life. Just so cool, so humble, so talented. Just a great guy. And him and Chris set the tone on the set. So those guys setting the tone for everybody else. Just so decent, such amazing humans. That whole set felt like a team. And so many people came up to me and were like, "Hey, we've worked a lot of movies, and none have felt like this." And that wasn't just one person, that was multiple people coming up to me and saying these things. Everybody from a craft services person who's like a Land Cruiser fan, and I checked, he has an awesome FJ60 we were checking out, talked about that for like an hour, to people coming up and saying, "Oh, my son's is in the Marine Corps boot camp, he's a huge fan, and I've had a box of books with me, so I'm like, yeah, what's his name, and here you go." And
that's cool.
But all of them said they've never felt this on a set before, that it feels like a team, it feels like family. And I think that's all due to Chris and Antoine at that high level, and because that filters down to everybody on that set. And it was pretty cool. 350 people, explosions, those little cords they have on the stuntmen, yanking them back with the explosion, flipping them off walls. Like, it was insane. It was crazy.
Is Chris doing a lot of the stunts himself?
Not those ones, but okay. Yeah, I'm sure he'll do a ton of stunts. But when the guys get blown up and like smash their heads into things, like that was
that's pretty intense, man. Some of those guys just like beat themselves down in order to get the shot and tell the story. It's pretty incredible what those guys do. Yeah. I mean, and they are real athletic. They are real athletes.
Oh yeah, Chris's stunt double, is a big dude, and he is so nimble, and it's incredible. I think you're online. There's some videos of him maybe for one of the Avengers movies doing like these flips and stuff, and a huge dude that you think is just going to be like a brawler, like tackling and pounding you, and
just stay out of his way.
He is like crazy with these flips and it's crazy. But he got blown up and like smashed into this wall, and there's a part Chris has to hit his my character James Reece, played by Chris, needs to hit his head really hard. Stunt double really hit his head hard. I could not believe it. Like it looks brutal when you see it. I was like, when I saw it, because I'm out there.
Cringe. Well, you know what it's like, real life too.
Yeah, and it wasn't fake. Like, the walls weren't soft. He has a helmet on, like a military Mitch helmet thing on, like an ops corps helmet, but still, like, his neck snapping back, crashing, like that's a real thing. And I kind of thought it would be different. I thought they'd be like a padded area, like it would be superimposed or something. But no, that's a yank on these cord cable rope things and spinning and smashing, and it's crazy. It was crazy. But it was awesome. It was such a cool experience.
Oh, I imagine. To be able to see it come to life, like literally off of the words of the page and come into life, and you can see it. What's it like working with Chris? Because from my perspective, I know you've hunted with him and done other things with him, but from my perspective, he seems to be a bit of an anomaly in Hollywood. This is a guy who has some beliefs that don't align with, I would say, Hollywood values, and he's willing to stand up for them. He's willing to talk about them publicly and be very vocal about it at his potentially own detriment when it comes to his career. What is it like working with that guy?
Yeah, well, we've known each other for a while now, and he's just so kind. Like, that's why he can still operate in Hollywood, is because he's so genuinely kind and good. So it's hard, even if you don't believe those things, it's hard to not like that guy. Which was important for me as an author, to have a character that was likable. So even on the page, I wanted people to like my main character, because they're going to spend all this time with him, whether they're reading the novels or they're listening. Like, you don't want to spend time with someone you don't like. Of course. So it was important for, like, and I thought, of Magnum. Like, everybody loved Magnum in the 80s, but he could flip that switch, boom, and he could get the job done. First time in television history where a protagonist kills an antagonist on a show who is not armed. And it was the best.
Oh, is that right? From Magnum PI.
Yeah. From
Interesting.
Great episode. Best ending in TV history, in my opinion. So anyway,
until the new series comes out.
That's right. But I knew I needed that, and I thought, who is an actor that can pull that off? That's Chris Pratt, because he's going to do some things in this that are going to surprise people, and having a likable going into that, where you have a personal and professional reputation, where your character is such that people already look up to you and like you. That's important, because now you're doing something dark, you're doing something gritty. So he is the perfect person to play James Reece, and I saw him, every day on set, all the stuff on. He is James Reece. It is awesome.
Yeah, because you look at Andy, what's his name? Andy Dwyer. I can't remember his last name. And that's not James Reece.
That's right.
And then you see a little bit of what is he? And I don't watch the Avengers stuff. Star Lord or whatever
Yeah,
his name is.
exactly.
Yeah. And, maybe a little bit more, closely aligned, or you see him in, I'm going
Jurassic World. Yeah.
yeah, I'm talking about my ignorance here because I don't watch a whole lot of movies, but that's not the role. So are you telling me? So here's what I'm understanding. You're saying that Hollywood, generally, I'm just saying like Hollywood is, a general thing, affords him some leniency because of his personality or his skill
I wouldn't
set
say
or
Hollywood
what?
in general, but it's just like when you have a conversation with someone you don't agree with, but you like them. They are thoughtful, they are considerate, they are a
Mm,
good person, and you know that they just happen to hold a different belief than you. So it's no
right.
different than that. I think that's really rather than
Yeah.
someone who is being incendiary intentionally, or is just
Yeah.
generally you get a bad feeling from them, or they're just not. You just get a sense that this doesn't seem like a very good person. Like he just whatever that is, whatever that thing
Right.
is, Chris has the opposite of that. Like he is a good person, and that comes through. So, and on set, all those people that were coming up to me, people that it was crazy. Like I'm standing next to Chris, and we're hanging out, and people will come up and like, "Hey, get a picture," and I kind of move aside, thinking they're talking to Chris, and they're like, "No, with you." Like,
Really?
what?
You're like, wait, who?
It's so
Me? Like,
crazy. It was
talking to somebody
amazing.
behind me or what?
It was so cool. I'm like, yes, let me sign all the books for you. You're awesome.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was super fun to be able to do that. But on that set of 350 people, probably people hold different beliefs, and they've seen you on Instagram or whatever, and they
Sure.
probably know that. But everyone was so kind and so thoughtful and so welcoming, and made a point to come up and say hi, and it was just, and they also saw it was like a reunion. We had like 10, 12 SEALs that I serve with on set. One guy's doing
Acting or consulting?
both. So
Okay.
Jared, the guy I talked about, plays a character in the book that speaking role, big role.
Mm,
It's awesome, and he crushed it. I could not believe, like I saw him on the screen when I'm watching the playbacks, or I'm watching it live, and then I'm watching the playbacks on the screen, and I was so impressed. Just incredible. So we have him in a speaking role, other SEALs in there that are playing SEALs. So they move together. So they move. I mean, I felt like we could go and like take down a compound with this group right as I'm watching. I'm like, these guys, because I knew them. I went down range, went to Iraq
yeah.
with one of them, and so it was like this sense like a reunion. Everybody sees us coming up to each other, and we haven't seen each other in a few years in a couple cases, and so we're talking, hanging out, getting reacquainted, and it was amazing. So we have technical advisor overall doing this action stuff, SEAL. We have Antoine's technical advisor with him, also a personal one, SEAL, amazing guy, Garrett Golden. Ray Mendoza is the other guy who's doing the technical advising for this,
Hmm.
and then you have all the SEALs in there that are doing their thing and just feeding off each other, just like we would if we went into a
Sure.
house like right now to go take it down. And all that comes across on screen, so everybody's seeing that. They're seeing that camaraderie. They're seeing that teamwork. So I think that fed into it as well. But it was a special week on set.
Does it feel, well, let me say it this way. When I was in the military, and it wasn't nearly to the degree that you were, we would get so frustrated with the dog, the dog and pony show, right? Where they'd march us out on the parade field and they'd show us off. And, it's part of the regalia of the military. And I get it. I understand there's tradition there. I think there's value to that, of course, but it was infuriating, frankly. Do you feel like the guys that you were in the teams with had any of those same thoughts as they were putting on a performance as opposed to actually engaged in the activity on set?
Yeah, no, they all are now doing these things. They're stunt coordinators, they're stuntmen,
Mm,
they're starting acting, they're writers. Kenny Sheard, he has some two great short films that are out there right now. You can probably find if you go to his Instagram. But they're all people that have now transitioned out of the military, and they're doing these other things. And in this case, they want to be in films like this. They want to learn that trade. They want to build on the foundation of the SEAL teams, and then start building on a new foundation above that on what their next calling in life is. And in this case, it's either acting or writing or maybe directing for some of them that want to do that one day, but they're starting to build that up and learn that trade. So they all want to be there. They weren't sent over from the SEAL teams to do it. They weren't
sure,
given
right. They're
orders to
not
do it.
fresh out of the teams or something.
Yeah, no,
They
they're
have
just
no idea what
putting
they're
on. They're
doing.
just having some fun. Now
Yeah,
we're doing it for fun. Now, the risks of screwing something up is a lot less dire. You get to do a retake. You know what I mean? You
for
just get
sure. You don't
that.
get
Take
dead
two.
if you
Yeah,
miss your cue, right?
exactly.
Yeah,
And it's a lot of fun. It was a lot of work though. We were working all
I
night
bet.
I saw all these people like before I didn't have an appreciation for just how hard people work in Hollywood because you see, your impression is that everything's taken care of. Look at this person complaining about this or whatever it is. Everybody on that set is working so hard. They're away from their families. In some cases, they're coming from other states or to come and do this for a certain amount of time. And in this case, it's a long time. It's months and months of being involved with this production. Life goes on during that time frame, just like it would on a deployment. Things are happening at home while they're here on the set for like 12 hours at a time, going about doing their job to be their part of this team that's making this thing that's now that's this series for Amazon. So I have so much more appreciation for how hard people work in that profession than I ever did before, having now seen it with my own eyes. Like it's just like anything else. You're going to put in. It depends on the person how much work they're going to put in. But in this case, everyone I saw was crushing it, and they were working so hard at their particular task. So cool.
I think we have a tendency to believe that this is like, the kids you'd see at the high school play where they'd practice for a couple hours after school or whatever. This is a profession, these guys are deep into what they're doing, and they're putting in long days. And look, if you strip everything else away, they're actually pretending to be somebody different, which has got to be exhausting. It's got to be completely exhausting to get into character.
Oh, totally. I mean, you're on. And in some of these cases with these stars, they're on the second they leave their house in the morning.
Is that right?
The second they leave their house, there's paparazzi outside.
True. Good point.
Big stars that are looking for them to do anything in order to give them some negative press so they can get some clicks, so they can get to sell the photo or whatever it might be. And if you're a genuinely nice person, as soon as you leave that house, you don't change. You still want to help people. But now when you leave that house, you have
people are trying to get you.
Everybody wants, something. So now I totally get it. So I was always fairly, forgiving when I saw somebody in the public eye, mess up or do something maybe out of character or get shown in a certain light. But now I get it. Now I really get it because the only time that you are not being essentially photographed in some people's cases is when you're behind closed doors. So it's a very interesting, it's a very interesting dynamic out there. But point being, then they get to set and then they're on also, and then they leave set and they're on until they get home and take a breath. And it's not that they change. I think it's probably harder if you're a genuinely good person because that's what you want to do. You want to help people. You want to give to people. And so now I understand why people have barriers in place. It's just you couldn't live otherwise. You couldn't do your job.
Well, I think even to a degree, you see that through yourself or even myself, again, to a very small degree. Like I can't answer every message. I can't do everything people want. I can't say yes to every response. It's impossible, let alone some megastar who's getting inundated at an infinite number of, or an infinite rate that I or you maybe personally are.
Exactly. At this point, I'm still like my wife goes to bed. I'm still up at night trying to thank everybody because for social media, the power of that is me being able to thank people because I would not be able to do what I love doing, which is writing, without the people who took a risk on me as a new author and then told a friend. And the third novel, Savage Son, made the New York Times list before I was on Rogan, before I was on Tucker Carlson, before Chris mentioned anything.
Well, it's because the Order of Man podcast.
No, it was. I traced it back. Now that we have these analytics and data, and it was totally because of
I knew it.
Podcast.
I knew it. Actually, the only reason I wanted to invite you on is to get the accolades from helping you reach the New York Times bestselling list on that, on that particular book.
Well, that's my point. That's my point is that you did. Without you, without these, Andy, without this group of people that we trust and that we try to help one another. Without that, it doesn't happen. That includes the person who has one follower who bought the book and told that follower, and then reached out and made a comment. So I want to try at least give that like heart or a thank you at the end of the day. So it's getting harder and harder to do that. But before I go to bed, like everybody else is asleep and I'm trying to go through and I'm like, thank you. I sincerely appreciate it because it does come from a real place. Because back in 1985, if you had done this, you wouldn't be able to reach out to anybody.
No,
you wouldn't even know. you wouldn't be able to thank anyone, except in like your one interview that you had maybe with a magazine. You'd be able to say, hey, thank you to everybody that bought this book or told a friend or whatever. But now you can engage. And the reason that this series is successful is because of that engagement, that grassroots effort from veterans, veteran-owned companies, from friends, from tactical shooters, from hunters, from readers, like all these people at this grassroots. And that made it powerful, because that was an authentic, like it was like a real thing that people had to risk time on because I was brand new, and that's their most valuable commodity. And they took that time. So I want to be, I feel as I'm writing, I owe them, my best efforts, and I owe them obviously to be thoughtful in anything that I do when I write it, whether that's the novel or that's an Instagram post or a response to someone's question. Like I owe them that requisite time, energy, and effort into that response because of that trust that's been built up with the readership, with that audience, rather than just, I don't take it for granted is what I mean to say. Like I sincerely appreciate all that support, and I'll never forget it.
How do you reconcile the fact that it's becoming increasingly difficult to do that on a personal level and having the desire to do it?
That's tough. Like I probably should have stopped staying up till like 2 a.m. to respond to these things a long time ago.
Right.
So yeah, eventually it won't be, well, I shouldn't say that. If things continue along the trajectory that they've been on, then it will be increasingly difficult to respond to everybody. But at this point, I'm still trying to do it, and at some point, it might not be possible anymore, and that's just how things progress. But it doesn't mean that I feel any less grateful.
Sure,
that's for sure.
Yeah. I want to go back to something you said about Chris. You said he's, a nice person. He's a kind person. You can't help but like him, but that's actually you too. I hope you acknowledge that. And I wanted to pay you that compliment. I think the first time that you and I actually had a real conversation was when we did our first podcast, which I think was roughly 3 years ago. And you were gracious enough to invite me into your home. I met your family. We broke bread together, and so we spent time together. And then not only that, as I was leaving, I don't know if you remember this, but you said, hey, I have some extra meat from my hunt. And I believe, if I remember correctly, you gave me some elk meat and maybe some venison, and you sent me on my way. And our interactions since then have been nothing but like, I've been trying to think about a word, like how would I describe you? And I can think of a genuine man, a decent person, and also somebody who's extremely capable of getting the job done in some very dire circumstances. And it's interesting because it's a bit of a dichotomy. You think about these hardened warriors and you think these guys are badasses and it as soon as you see them. And I say this out of the utmost respect I have for you. You are a very unassuming individual when it comes to your capabilities and skill sets. Would you agree with that? What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I think it'd be exhausting to be on all the time. And by that, I mean, I don't need to do cartwheels from shadow to shadow as I'm, working my way through life. What's important is to have my head up and be aware, because it's my responsibility as a husband, as a father, to be in that role as a protector. But it doesn't mean I'll be like, kids, go, all right. If we don't need to.
That's what you think, right? You think
paranoid about it.
This guy's always on. He's got to be, right? Or this is him.
I mean, you're on in the sense that you're situationally aware, that you realize that society is fragile. You realize that not everyone out there is looking to lend you a helping hand. That you're responsible for the safety of your kids, of your wife, whatever it might be. So to do that, it means you need to be aware. You need to train. It doesn't mean you need to make everybody else around you on edge all the time because you're doing, you're doing these somersaults, ninja rolls from shadow to shadow.
That's what we think of when we think Navy SEAL. We think they get up at 3 a.m. and they're doing, like you said, ninja rolls, and they're hyper alert, hyper awake. Yeah, that's what we think of. I think the general person would think that about an individual. But I know you. Another individual I think of is JP Donnell.
Yeah.
Man, what a great human being. He was up here last week and spending some time with Origin and doing training. And we got to roll in jiu-jitsu. And that's another one who's like, this guy could very seriously do some damage if needs be in a controlled environment. And yet he doesn't wear that. And you don't wear that, and it's very interesting to me.
Yeah. I mean, part of that's probably, is probably semi-primal in that, you want to, when you do strike, you want it to be a surprise. I mean, that's part of, putting an ambush out there.
Sure.
And there's no reason. I also grew up with a lot of '80s movies, so when we're talking like Roadhouse or something, be nice until it's time to not be nice.
Yeah.
That's good advice right there. Like, why not? Why it would be exhausting to go through life any other way, I think. And, for me, I always try to, pass on to the kids and let them know that it's important to never miss an opportunity to make somebody's day. Go out of your way to make somebody's day. That's important, I think. But you could do the opposite, and some people do the opposite, particularly online. And someone told me a great quote. Was it Antoine? I forget who did it this week. It wasn't even a quote. It was just a term. They called it digital courage. And instead of liquid courage, digital courage from behind that.
Yeah.
I was like, that's fantastic. I got to write that down and use that in a novel.
Everybody's a bigger badass than they really are in real life, right?
So there's a lot of that going around, and you can either contribute to that or you can take a different tact. So I try to, keep my interactions online positive, thoughtful, most importantly. And then that's why I started that podcast, which just came out. So Danger Close, Beyond the Books with Jack Carr, so that I could go more in depth on these things that lend themselves better to long form conversation than a one sentence reply on Twitter or Instagram to someone who's just looking to be annoyed at it or to strike back at it or to interpret it a certain way because they're miserable or whatever it is. Those sorts of platforms don't really lend themselves to discussing some of these issues through the nuance that's required. So the podcast was a way to do that because I'm getting all these questions all the time, and I have conversations with amazing people all the time. So I can't wait for you to come on, and we'll do it. We'll turn the tables, and I'll get back to you for a little bit. I'm really looking forward to that.
It's a little different than that.
Yeah, no, totally. I'm looking forward to talking. I'm definitely looking forward to talking to people that have only, even though it's a conversation, it's different when you flip it, which is cool. I did it with Andy Stump the other day on Cleared Hot.
Is that right?
And then I did mine, and so that'll launch in a week or two. But so it is different. It is different, but I'm looking forward to that because I get to ask you some cool stuff that we maybe haven't had a chance to ask, or maybe I thought I knew, but I'm not quite so sure of. And it just kind of forces us to sit down when we don't have that much time. And especially you're in Maine now, I'm still in Utah. It's an excuse to sit down and get to hang out for a little bit, which is probably what I'm looking forward to most about the podcast is sitting down and talking to people that I already know, but we're both so busy that we don't have a time to do it. But now we have an excuse to do it.
Right. So. Yeah, I remember, I think one of the first times we sat down, Trevor Thompson actually came.
Yeah.
I think he popped by because he was in the area. And so then him and I did a podcast, and I think we all did a podcast together or something. Right. I can't remember exactly what we did. But
that was it. It's so much fun.
Go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say that house is like a, and this one too is like a way station for, special operators, for CIA people, FBI people, hunters, it's crazy the people that pass through and drop in to say hi. Kyle Lamb just drops by for the day, Delta Force, Mogadishu, awesome guy. And we're like, let's do a podcast. The people stop by and so the kids are getting exposed to some really interesting people, which is kind of cool.
That's a great point. The kids are getting introduced to some interesting people. I thought that as well. We've got John Lovell. I think you know John. He's coming up this week. JP was here last week. We had Chad Wright was here the week before. And so it's
like rolling with Jocko at some point. I think I saw your kids with him maybe like a year ago.
Yeah, a couple of years ago or whatever it was. Spent some time. Like, it's incredible that you can give your kid. And you know what? We're in this really interesting environment with the fallout from COVID where people are isolated from themselves and we're craving personal and human interaction, getting together face to face, shaking hands, hugging, training, whatever that looks like. And so the podcast, I'm so glad you've started your podcast because we've talked about this for about a year or so. I'm so glad that you've started it because people are craving real conversations. We're so sick of, the 40 character quip, that goes after something that really is just not that important, or the quick snippet of a picture that's filtered and curated in just the right light and context so everybody clicks like and follow and whatever. And we really want real interactions, which I think is the value of what both you and I are doing here.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that social media is definitely an interesting animal, and I continue to see, I continue to be fascinated by it. It gives me a lot of ammunition to use as I develop characters for my novels as well. But then, man, some of those comments do get you. People think you're a SEAL and you're all this tough. You got super thick skin and all that. But like when I'm doing that, when I'm going down that list at the end of the night, and I'm saying thank you, and it's like 2 a.m, and I'm doing that, and then you get that one comment that someone like threw in there, it just gets you for some reason. You're not going to respond to it. Maybe you just even like it, or maybe you don't do anything at all. For my case, anyway. Although you want to engage, you just know that it's not productive to engage. But still, and then you go to bed, and then I'm wide awake just thinking about this one.
Not the 100 positive comments. Exactly. And you know what's interesting about it is they're so good at hitting the right buttons. Like these are psychological geniuses because they are so good at just honing in on that one thing. I don't know how they do it. Like there's obviously some sort of skill set involved with that, even though these people are just trolling you. It's pretty wild, man.
It is. But hey, that's part of it. That's the other side. Like if you want to engage with people, you want to say thank you to people. Well, guess what? That the no barriers allows you to do that, but it also allows people to, to post a crazy review, give you a 1-star because Amazon sent their thing a day late. Like that happens.
Has nothing to do with your book.
It happens to all authors. Right. But that wasn't available. It wasn't an option 30 years ago. Back then, you had to actually, if you wanted to write something, well, you had to sit down. You had to write it. Well, first you had to read it. Then you had to write a letter. Then you had to find the address of your newspaper or magazine you wanted to send it into. You had to address it. You had to put a stamp on it. You had to put the letter in the mail. Then that had to arrive. It had to make it through however it gets to the desk of that editor. Then the editor has to take the time to open it, read it. And if you were crazy, guess what happened? Trash can, because they're going to print like 4 of them. Those were barriers. Now that crazy one, boom, it's right there for all to see. So it's really interesting. But I look at this as social media and all these different platforms that we have today as opportunities to engage, to say thank you, to build essentially what is a startup business through these mediums that authors didn't have 20, 30 years ago. And I have another interview at 1.
All right, we're gonna get you out of here, man.
Dude, can we jump back on? What do you want to jump back on? Or are we just going to cut it right here and come back?
If you've got to go, you've got to go. I've got another conversation this afternoon. But when we do our other podcast, we'll do it together. Let me just end by saying this, Jack. I appreciate you, man. I really appreciate our friendship. I do have to ask you one favor that I'm going to take care of offline here real quick. But I want to tell you, I appreciate you. I enjoy your books. I enjoy your works. Guys, go pick up a copy of The Devil's Hand, which is his new book. And of course, the other 3 books prior to that. I appreciate you, brother. We'll get you going. I know you're a busy man.
Thank you so much for having me on. I sincerely appreciate it. And can't wait to do it again, brother.
We'll talk soon.
Take care.